Oh, it's a cart.
I did not know what the cold open was today. Phoenix was like, we're just throwing one at you today. I thought it was going to be a news blooper. And instead, it was just a man killing a fish in a very unpleasant way. I'm sorry about that. Anywho, I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report. I'm crying. This is the Rubin Report. It's March 26, 2024. We're live streaming on Rumble, Locals, and YouTube. As always, post-game show, rubinreport.locals.com, and you can help keep us independent by throwing in a couple bucks a month if you so choose. But if not, you can just sign up and you'll get our push notifications, and we can always get information to you without big tech being between us. Before we get to the show today, we got a really solid show. There's a lot of things happening in the political space, so we're doing a little more racehorse politics today. A lot happening there. Just quickly, I want to touch what happened in Baltimore last night. Absolutely horrific. Well, we'll get some info here. In the city of Baltimore, a bridge has collapsed entirely into the Patapsco River following a collision with a cargo ship. You're going to see the video of the collapse in just a second. According to the Baltimore City Fire Department, up to 20 individuals and multiple vehicles have plunged into the river. Emergency responders are presently at the scene, and the incident has been declared a mass casualty event. I mean, it's just unimaginable. Look at that. That looks like a movie or AI. It is very unclear what actually happened here. You know, of course, this is the internet in 2024, so some people are saying this was intentional, that the ship was hacked into because the lights went out on the ship before. I have no idea. We still don't know how many people, although they said mass casualty event right there. It's unclear how many people are dead and or missing at this point. We don't know what happened with the ship's captain yet. Like, this is just unfolding right now. But anyway, I thought it was worth covering because if you haven't seen it, I mean, this sort of thing is why it's important to have the best engineers, the best builders, the best everything building infrastructure. I don't know that there was anything unsound with the bridge itself, but when you watch something like that collapse, it's like we should have the best of the best building all of our stuff. And I think you can already see where I'm going with this, that once you allow that woke thing, and I'm not saying this has anything to do with that specifically, but once you will decide, okay, we won't hire the best of the best to build our planes or build our bridges or build our buildings or our roads or whatever else, then bad things are going to happen. So again, I have no indication that that is directly related to what happened here, but and also it's unfolding at the moment, so I don't want to say much more than that, but it's just absolutely horrific. And what an odd juxtaposition. You throw me a dead fish and now that thing, okay, let's try to get to a show somehow. There are some wins stacking up, and that's what this show is going to be about today, because some interesting things are happening as it relates to Trump and his potential VP pick. I think more and more people, again, as I keep talking about, are waking up to the tricks of the media. And there are some tech answers to some of our big problems. So let's just dive right in, because Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat, who we talk about on this show a bunch, and she's been on many, many times, former Democrat congresswoman from Hawaii, current member of the military, I would say disaffected liberal, Tulsi Gabbard was on Tucker's show yesterday, and Tucker asked her if she would be interested in being Donald Trump's vice presidential pick.
So you've been in a lot of different news stories talked about as a potential VP choice for Trump. I have no idea if that's going to happen or not. Probably unknowable. Are you open to that? If you don't do that, what else are you open to? What's your plan?
I would be honored. I'd be honored to serve our country in that way or in other ways, and to be in a position to help President Trump if he is reelected, to actually address these challenges, to help execute those policies that will bring back a secure border, that will breathe new life into our economy and start to get this radical inflation out of control.
What a great answer there. First off, just the heartfelt nature with which she speaks. Like, there's something very, very real about her. And having known her now on camera and off camera, this is like a good, decent woman. But her answer, she'd be honored to serve our country. Like, that's the answer you want to hear first, right? None of the drama, none of the clickbait, all of that stuff. And then, of course, gets into border and economy, and she talked about a whole bunch of other things. The idea of a disaffected liberal, someone who only years ago, a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, was a Democrat, last time around, running as a presidential candidate on the Democrat side. As you may remember, because if you watch the show, you're pretty astute as it comes to politics, she was the last Democrat running against Joe Biden. Remember, right before Super Tuesday, all the other Democrats who the machine loved, whether it was Gay Pete or what's her name, the Indian from Elizabeth Warren, the Indian from Massachusetts, all of them, they all cut their deals and they all got out of the way to hand it to Biden. Tulsi stayed around as long as she could. She is not a progressive. She is an old school liberal. And as I always say, for Trump to expand the pool, what does Trump have to do right now? He's got to get some of those suburban women. Those are the ones who have most of the aversion to Trump, the middle or upper class suburban women. A lot of them have had it with the Democrats. They don't want their daughters turning into boys. They don't like what they've seen with the Democrats after October 7th. They want law and order in the cities, like all of that stuff, right? But they have some aversion to Trump. Well, now you could bring in someone who nobody could be like, well, she's a real right-wing radical maniac. She's thoughtful. She's interesting. Like there is something. There is something. She's a woman. I suppose that makes her a minority to some extent, a veteran. She's popular with moderates and independents and Dems. But also there's another piece of it that I really want to drive home, which is that the establishment Republicans and Democrats actually hate her. And that's what most people are waking up to. Here she is talking about that.
To call me a treasonous liar was saying, hey, there are U.S. funded, DOD funded biolabs in Ukraine that should be secured because there's a war going on over there. And the last thing we or the world needs is anything going on in those biolabs being unleashed in a way that could pose a threat to people. That was seen as...
but I should just say you weren't guessing.
No.
You got that, or it was confirmed in any case, in a public exchange in the Senate between Marco Rubio of Florida, the sitting Republican senator, and Victoria Nuland, the Undersecretary of State, who volunteered it on camera.
Yes.
So...
And it was on the DOD website talking about their long history of funding these biolabs, not only in Ukraine, but in many other countries.
Of course.
All right, what's interesting about that clip, she's referring to Mitt Romney, who called her a treasonous liar for saying that there might have been a leak at that bioweapons lab that we now know we were funding, at least to some extent. So Mitt Romney, an establishment Republican, right, who clearly has nothing to do with the future of the Republican Party, he doesn't like her. You know who also doesn't like Tulsi Gabbard? Well, an establishment Democrat, Hillary Clinton. Do you remember this quote by Hillary Clinton? This is wild. This is when Tulsi was still the only remaining Democrat running against Biden, and they were worried because Biden didn't really have a lot of support. The machine supported him, but a lot of people weren't into him, and they were doing everything they could to take out Tulsi. This is what Hillary said about Tulsi. They're also going to do a third party again, and I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary, and they are grooming her to be the third party candidate. She's a favorite of the Russians, and they have a bunch of sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far. And that's assuming Jill Stein will give it up, which she might not, because she's also a Russian asset. Yes, she's a Russian asset. I mean, totally. Okay, so putting aside Jill Stein, who always runs third party, never gets any votes for a second, there was Hillary Clinton telling America that a sitting member of Congress was a Russian asset. So you get it. So the Mitt Romney wing, which is crumbling, hates Tulsi. The Hillary wing of the other side, but you might call it all a uniparty, they hate Tulsi. And that kind of leads you to believe that Tulsi could actually be someone who is a game changer here. And listen to how she talks about who her real opponents are in 2024.
Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are not in office right now, but they still continue to wield immense power in influencing the decisions that are being made.
So can I just sort of sidebar, but I think relevant, interesting. Are you answering the question that everyone watching has, which is who is running the government at this point? It's obviously not Joe Biden. Yeah. You think Hillary Clinton?
It's not a leap of imagination to know that that's true when you look at the people who are in Joe Biden's administration. They are the people who were the right hands for the Obama administration, for President Obama, and for Hillary Clinton. When Hillary Clinton said herself the other day, she said, "Oh yeah, I talk to the White House every day." So it is no shock or surprise who the influences are behind the policies that are coming out of this White House that many people say is the most radical and woke White House that our country has ever seen.
Oh, well, there's
So first off, I just want to talk about the tone for a second, because remember when DeSantis was running and I was showing you clips of him all the time, one of the things that I said was it was easy to show clips of him because then I didn't have to say much after, because it was just true and it was right. There was no drama and everything else. She absolutely has that, right? Like she has that thing. It's like you can tell she's telling the truth. It's not a lot of BS. It's not a pig in lipstick kind of thing. Like there's that portion of it too. And then of course, as Tucker is correctly pointing out, it's like everyone knows. Every single one of you who's watching this, you know somebody who's supporting Joe Biden. It's probably not you. But you know, if you ask that person, do you really think Joe Biden's in charge? If you really got them, maybe after a couple of drinks, they would admit that they don't think Joe Biden is in charge. So then the question is, who is in charge? And it's probably, as she lays out, a lot of the Obama holdovers, I would say more than the Hillary holdovers. But the point here is, if Donald Trump, and we're going to get to Trump in just a second because there's a lot of news around him, if Donald Trump is looking around right now and going, okay, I got the MAGA base. The MAGA base is X amount of people. How do we expand? How do we get all of these disaffected people who now see the border situation? They see all the woke stuff, blah, blah, blah. And also when Tulsi mentions that this is the most woke administration ever, remember, we were sold Joe Biden as the moderate Joe Biden. That's what they kept telling us. Don't worry, he's not the crazy, he's not the AOC, he's not the progressive wackadoodles. He's old Joe Biden. He's been in government for 47 years, right? Like, you know about Joe Biden, he was vice president. But he has ushered in, it would be almost undistinguishable if they had had a crazy woke person. How would the policies be different? He has ushered in all of this. So there is a huge opportunity for Trump. We'll get to Trump in just a sec. Let me talk to you guys about the wellness company quick. Guys, the fact that on Thursday, March 21st, the court ruled that the FDA must delete every social media post addressing the use of ivermectin for treatment or prevention of COVID-19. It's been determined that the FDA lied in their demonizing of ivermectin and other effective drugs for the last 4 years, vindicating doctors like Peter McCullough, who stood strong despite every cancellation campaign. But the question so many people are asking is, okay, but how do I get ivermectin or HCQ? Most doctors still won't even consider prescribing it. Keep listening. Americans are waking up and understanding that now, more than ever, we need to have these life-saving medications on hand. They aren't just remedies, they're lifelines for the next time. Because there will be a next time, and the wellness company's Contagion Emergency Kit has you covered. The only one of its kind. This prescription emergency kit provides you with a carefully selected assortment of effective medications for COVID-19 and other respiratory illnesses, ivermectin, HCQ, Z-Pak, budesonide, along with nebulizer, so you can rest easy knowing that you have emergency meds on hand, along with a guidebook for safe use. Backed by research and endorsed by experts like Peter McCullough and Dr. Harvey Risch, the wellness company's Contagion Emergency Kit is a must-have. Avoid the chaos, wait times, and price of a hospital, and have exactly what you need for as low as the cost of a single doctor's visit. Go to twc.health/Rubin and grab your Contagion Emergency Kit now. That's twc.health/Rubin. Code Rubin saves you $45 at checkout. Kits are only available in the US of A. And now back to me. Okay, so as I said, I think there are some wins happening, and I know it can be hard, and there's always a lot of political drama, and there was a whole bunch of nonsense happening last week and all of that stuff. But Tulsi getting in the mix strikes me as a win. So now let's talk about some wins as it relates to Donald Trump. We've got some info here from the Daily Wire. Donald Trump secured a victory in a New York appeals court on Monday, as the court will allow the former president to post a significantly lower bond in his civil business fraud judgment. Instead of posting a bond of $464 million, the appeals court ruled that Trump must now guarantee $175 million, ABC News correspondent Aaron Katersky reported. The appeals court ruling also means that Trump can continue to run his business in New York and gives him an additional 10 days to post the $175 million bond, according to CNN. So remember, this was the civil business trial. And they decided to say, okay, Donald Trump, and what he was basically being accused of was overinflating the prices of his properties, right? Now, we've been through this a million times. That's just not really how business works, because you can't go to a bank and just say, oh, my businesses are worth this, so I want a loan of that, right? They all bought houses, or many of you have bought houses. There are appraisers. There are people come in that look at the books and they go, okay, you have this much in assets, we can lend you this much. Anyway, all the banks were also made whole. There was no victim here. Trump doesn't owe anyone money, but okay, New York is deeply corrupt. They wanted the 464 mil appeals court. They lower it to 175 and say that he can still do business there, although I suspect that he will not. Here is a quick video of Trump talking about how he's going to pay that 175.
Thank you very much. What's your collateral for the bond? Cash. Is there a way to move card?
All right, so he's going to pay it in cash. He's got 175, I guess, sitting around. That's pretty sweet, 175 mil sitting around. So he is going to pay that. And now let's go to another video of Trump talking about how, okay, now that he's paid that, he might have some cash reserves to potentially self-fund the campaign a bit more.
You were going to say something?
Mr. President, you mentioned the cash you had. You said on Friday it's something like $500 million. You intended to put some of that into the campaign. Now that the bond's been reduced, are you going to start putting money into your campaign? You haven't done that since 2016.
Well, first of all, it's none of your business, I mean, frankly. But I might do that. I have the option. But if I have to spend $500 million on a bond, I wouldn't have that option. I'd have to start selling things. I don't have to sell anything because it's a phenomenal company. Look, I built a phenomenal company. Someday they'll actually report that. I built a phenomenal company that's very low leverage, unbelievably low leverage, with a lot of cash, a lot of everything else. Why should I let a crooked judge make a decision to give $450 million that allows me to spend very little money on my campaign if I so choose? I'll be spending money on my campaign. I might spend a lot of money on my campaign, but I should have that option. A crooked judge shouldn't say, we're going to have you post a bond and take all of that money that I could be spending on a campaign or other things if I want to do other things. So we were gratified by the professionalism of the opinion today. I thought it was I think it's a very important opinion for New York, but the only thing that's going to really solve that problem is when I win, because you're going to have to win. Because no company is going to be coming to New York if I don't win that case. That case is a scam, it's a sham, and it's a hoax.
Everything he said there was true. Again, the banks were paid back. So even if you believe that Donald Trump inflated the price of his properties to get bigger loans than he deserved, nobody was the victim here. So the 464 million judgment was completely insane. His argument is that the 175 is too. I love how he answers the question like, it's none of your business what I'm going to do with my money. He's kind of right to that extent too. But the bigger problem is Trump is right. He has to win not only further appeals on this thing, but in a weird way, he has to win the presidency to basically stay out of jail at this point, and that's banana republic level stuff. They will not stop coming for this guy. And when I say they, I am talking about every level of the system, right? There's the judicial layer, there's the corrupt courts, there's the media layer, there's every layer, there's the political layer, all of those things, right? So now let's cover the media layer for just a second, because Jen Psaki, now remember Jen Psaki, who worked in the Biden White House and now is supposedly a journalist, a quote-unquote journalist over at MSNBC. Listen to her analysis of what just happened with Trump, and every word of this is completely backwards. This is, well, I always say it's incredible, and it's not. Here, this is not incredible. Enjoy.
And what really struck me about all of this is just how ironic it is that a guy who has railed against a two-tiered system of justice repeatedly has been afforded the kind of leniency that no one else would ever receive. I mean, of course there is a two-tier justice system in this country, one in desperate need, by the way, of reform. But it is definitely not tiered in the way that Donald Trump is describing. And he's implying that he is the one who is treated worse, when actually the opposite is true. Just consider that under New York state law, Attorney General Letitia James could have enforced the nearly $500 million judgment against Trump last month, but she didn't. She granted him a 30-day grace period to front the money before the appeals court intervened.
Oh, so it's so nice of the New York courts and Letitia James and everybody for allowing the 30-day grace period for eventually to get down to the appeals court. So he only has to pay $175 on something that he did nothing wrong in the first place. So not the $464. The idea that Trump is getting leniency, no, he's being unjustly accused of something that is clear political persecution. Obviously, everyone knows they would not be going after Trump's businesses in New York if he was not running for president. It's just that simple. They would let him have hotels, they'd let him sell Trump wine or Trump steaks or whatever else the hell he's selling, and Trump hats, and that would be it. So no, lady, Trump is not being treated with leniency here. Leniency might be the fact that, I don't know, Joe Biden's son was working at Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company, and he was also selling access to the president through his art, which people were buying for $500,000. Do you think anyone was actually in their right mind thinking that Hunter Biden, the crackhead's art, was worth $500,000? Or do you think that perhaps it had something to do with maybe getting access to the president of the United States and why, or he was VP at the time, or do you think maybe when Hunter Biden and the rest of the Biden family is writing checks to the big guy, do you think there might be some leniency in the fact that the courts haven't gone after that guy? Did I make the point? I made the point? Okay. Let's talk about Moinkbox and then we'll get to some other stuff. Guys, 60% of U.S. pork production comes from one company owned by the Chinese, and their hogs are given something called ractopamine, which is banned in 160 countries, including China, yet you find it in your grocery aisle every day. Well, you know this. There's a better way, and that's Moink, Moo plus Oink. Moink delivers grass-fed and grass-finished beef and lamb, pastured pork and chicken, and sustainable wild-caught Alaskan salmon straight to your door. Moink farmers farm like our grandparents did, and as a result, Moink meat tastes like it should because the family farm does it better. The Moink difference is a difference you can taste, and you can feel good knowing you're helping family farms stay financially independent as well. You choose the meat delivered in every box, like ribeyes to chicken breasts to pork chops to salmon fillets and much more. Plus, you can cancel anytime. Shark Tank host Kevin O'Leary called Moink's bacon the best bacon he's ever tasted, and they guarantee you'll say, oink, oink, I'm just so happy I got moinked. Keep American farming going by signing up at moinkbox.com/Rubin right now. And listeners of this show get 2 free steaks in your first box. It's the best steak you'll ever taste, but for a limited time. moinkbox.com/Rubin, moinkbox.com/Rubin. And now back to me. All right, so what else is happening in the media? When I talk about some wins, so right, like Tulsi getting in the mix on the Republican side, pretty good. Trump getting a little leniency from the courts and having to pay less in these ridiculous fines is kind of a win, right? As opposed to him having to pay the $464. But another thing that's happening right now is more and more people are waking up to the absolute, complete farcical shenanigans from mainstream media. So check this out from the Daily Wire. You probably heard about this a couple days ago. On February 26th, Ronna McDaniel to leave as RNC chair on March 8th. Okay, so she did leave the RNC. And now a headline from the Hollywood Reporter. Where did she go after screwing up the Republican Party? NBC News hires former RNC chair Ronna McDaniel. So Ronna McDaniel, who basically has overseen the last couple of years of disastrous Republican elections, and by the way, Donald Trump backed her twice, right? Harmeet Dillon was also running, and the base really loved Harmeet Dillon. Ron DeSantis backed Harmeet Dillon. So Trump, you got to call it out when it's bad. Trump did back her twice, but she's overseen just the absolute destruction of the Republican Party, right? No red wave. It's just a freaking mess. They wasted money on makeup and a whole bunch of other stuff. Well, now she, of course, what do you do if you're a pet Republican? If you screw up things for Republicans, you never conserve anything, you get a job being a pet Republican, either on The View or MSNBC, et cetera, et cetera. And here is Ronna McDaniel on doing her new gig. This is for the first time a couple days ago. And congratulations, lady, you're getting a paycheck.
Well, let's talk about the election now. Donald Trump says one of his first acts, if he is reelected to a second term, would be, quote, to free those charged and convicted of crimes related to January 6th. Do you support that?
I want to be very clear. The violence that happened on January 6th is unacceptable. It doesn't represent our country. It certainly does not represent my party. We should not be attacking the Capitol. We should not be having violence. I said it that day. I put a statement out that day that this is not acceptable. If you attacked our Capitol and you have been and you've been convicted, then that should stay.
So then, but to the question though, do you disagree with Trump saying he's going to free those who've been charged and
I do not
convicted?
think people who committed violent acts on January 6th should be freed.
So you disagree with that? He's been saying that for months. Ronna, why not speak out earlier? Why just speak out about that now?
When you're the RNC chair, you kind of take one for the whole team, right? Now I get to be a little bit more myself, right? This is what I believe. I don't think violence should be in our political discourse, Republican or Democrat. And I disagree with that. I agree with him on a whole host of other things. Let's close the border. Let's make sure we have good incomes for people. Let's make sure we do a lot of great things. But on that point, I don't think we should be freeing people who violently attacked Capitol Hill police officers and attacked the Capitol.
Congratulations, lady. So she basically just said, oh, I was taking one for the team before. I was lying before, but now here I am on NBC with my new 6-figure deal, and I can tell you the truth. So you're just a pet. They give you a cookie after, they pat you on the head, and they thank you. Thank you for not helping Republicans or conservatives in any way. Like, it's just so pathetic. Brock just mentioned while we were playing that somebody who deserves a lot of credit right now when you see what an absolute fraud she is Vivek, because we were at the debate in Miami that I'm sure many of you watched. I think we covered it after, where he basically started the debate by turning to the moderators, basically saying, you're a bunch of sellouts. And he was like, and Ronna McDaniel, who had been on the stage right before the debate started, she welcomes everybody there. You're the head of the RNC. He was like, you basically destroyed the whole freaking party. So credit where credit is due on Vivek. But now what's hilarious about this, and why I want to frame this as this is a win for sanity, having this woman show up at MSNBC, is now all of the NBC and MSNBC hosts, they're all freaking out that the place that pays them to be Democrat shills is now paying someone who they think is a Republican shill. So all hell is breaking loose. Check this out. Morning Joe Scarborough and his wife, they're not happy about someone with other opinions on that network.
Let's talk about the hiring of former RNC chair Ronna McDaniel.
Well, she was on Sunday's Meet the Press. It was her first appearance since NBC News hired her as a political analyst. I know you won't be surprised to know that we've been inundated with calls this weekend, as have most people connected with this network, about NBC's decision to hire her. We learned about the hiring when we read about it in the press on Friday. We weren't asked our opinion of the hiring, but if we were, we would have strongly objected to it for several reasons, including, but not limited to, as lawyers might say, Ms. McDaniel's role in Donald Trump's fake elector scheme and her pressuring election officials to not certify election results while Donald Trump was on the phone.
To be clear, we believe NBC News should seek out conservative Republican voices to provide balance in their election coverage. But it should be conservative Republicans, not a person who used her position of power to be an anti-democracy election denier. And we hope NBC will reconsider its decision. It goes without saying that she will not be a guest on Morning Joe in her capacity as a paid contributor.
You all deserve each other. It's a damn shame nobody watches that network, because it's hilarious, actually. If they would just put a laugh track in, it would be a hell of a lot better. Do they know that on their very same channel is right now Jen Psaki, who worked in the Biden administration, and she used her position of power to obfuscate when she was asked about big tech colluding with the government. And she basically said, oh yeah, we kind of do. We kind of do. So she has run cover for the administration. Oh, but right, it's okay when they do it, because that's their people lying in their direction. She just, what he means there is, oh, we'd love to have some other conservative Republicans, just not this one, just not this one, right? They'll always get you pet nothing people, right? That's like Alyssa Farah on The View. Find me a Republican who's just kind of nothing and will constantly break their own knees and bow to the altar of the machine. That's the Republican we like. Anyway, here's Rachel Maddow, who, as you know, lies about absolutely everything, from COVID to Donald Trump's a Russian asset to Jussie Smollett was lynched, all of the stuff. Here she is laying out the case against her new colleague, Ronna McDaniel.
The person who is the head of the Republican Party during Donald Trump's time in office and during his effort to throw out the election result and stay in power anyway, and during his effort to run for election again after having done that, is Ronna Romney McDaniel. And she pitched in and helped. She helped set in motion the part of the plot that involved sending fake Trump electors to Congress from states that Trump did not win. So Republicans in Washington could use those fake, fraudulent elector slates to contend that maybe Trump did win those states, even though he didn't. And don't believe me on that. There she is on page 23 and page 27 of the federal indictment charging Donald Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States. There's her personal appearance in this scene of the crime, as alleged by the U.S. Justice Department in this ongoing criminal case. And this project is now ongoing, right? Now the project is to tell the American people that those efforts around the 2020 election were righteous. That 2020 election, it wasn't okay. Those election results were not correct. We shouldn't believe American elections. We shouldn't believe American elections are real elections. American election results should not be seen as real. They should not be respected. That's the project now, right?
God, the sexual tension between her and Ronna is thick. Am I right? Okay, look, I'm not sitting here defending Ronna McDaniel. She was horrible RNC head, right? Absolutely horrible. She has led to a lot of the destruction of the Republican Party that we're seeing right now. Hopefully some of that is turning around. Remember, that red wave never came. She should have been fired the next day. Absolutely the next day. Trump backed her even after that. That's just reality. I'm playing all this because I think this is a good sign. It is hilarious there is now an insurrection, you might say, over at MSNBC because they have brought her on board. And now check this out from Democrat activist Chuck Todd. He's very upset with his bosses, but I have a feeling he will still cash the paycheck.
Dive right in. What were your takeaways?
Look, let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor by NBC News. I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract. She wants us to believe that she was speaking for the RNC when the RNC was paying for her. So she has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
Yeah.
Is she speaking for herself or is she speaking on behalf of who's paying her? Once at the RNC, she did say that, hey, I'm speaking for the party. I get that. That's part of the job. So what about here?
And Chuck Todd, that mirror I'm always talking about, he's saying, that, yes, you're right. You should question her motives. She said when she was head of the RNC, she took one for the team, so she took money and didn't say the truth. Now she's taken money from a new person, and you should question whether she's telling the truth. But what about you, Chuck? You're somebody who takes a paycheck from somebody to spread the misinformation of the machine. Do we have a video that might illustrate that point?
Coronavirus news just now from the CDC. Dr. Rochelle Walensky, she's briefing right now as the country once again is moving in the wrong direction on this virus. Walensky says there has been a 10% increase in cases since last week. 10%. 25% of those increased in cases are the Delta variant. She called the Delta variant, quote, hyper-transmissible, and that its spread is being fueled by communities with low vaccination rates. Director Walensky says more than 1,000 counties have a vaccination rate lower than 30%. Folks, nearly 10,000 people died in the month of June. They were needless deaths. Please get vaccinated. If you know someone who's not vaccinated, find a way to convince them to get vaccinated. Literally, the only people dying are the unvaccinated. And for those of you spreading misinformation, shame on you. Shame on you. People are needlessly dying because of your misinformation. Think about it. I don't know how some of you sleep at night who are doing this for a living on television.
Man, what a piece of shit. I mean, I get physically ill when I watch those videos of them injecting people. Everything he said there was a complete lie. So Chuck, again, just a mirror. You don't need a vax again. You probably got vaxxed 20 times. But it was a complete lie. The vaccine did not stop anyone from getting COVID nor transmitting COVID, no matter how many times you got injected. There was no evidence that if you got 18 boosters that it was going to get you a lesser COVID. There just wasn't even enough time to run the tests on any of that stuff. like you guys get it, all the stuff with vaccine injuries and everything else. But look, so again, it's just, they just need a freaking mirror. But now I want to connect this to something else that's really happening in the media right now. The media is constantly going after people who are in competition with it. As we watch MSNBC and CBS, as we watch these things, CNN, et cetera, as we watch them collapse, they realize there is a rise of alternative media. And more people, for better or worse, they're getting their phone through this thing. And I suppose that puts a little more pressure on people like me to try to do something roughly approximating honesty, because people are looking at the New York Times, they're looking at CNN, they're going, man, you've been lying to us for years, you locked us in our home, you injected us with that stuff, you tried to guilt us into all of this, like all of the hoaxes and very fine people on both sides and everything else. And then this new media rises, and then they go, shit, people are tuning out, we're gonna lose our paycheck. So I want to connect this to a video. I think we showed you this once before. This is a side-by-side of Joe Rogan. Now, Joe Rogan is way bigger than MSNBC. He is way bigger than CNN. That is just the truth. That's why they are always trying to take him out. So you may remember this when Joe Rogan announced he had COVID and he was going to take ivermectin, which they said was a horse dewormer and everything. Look at how CNN changed the color of the video to make him look sicker than he actually was. This is wild.
And turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone, everything.
Okay, so the reason I'm showing you that, we're going to connect it to something that came out yesterday, another hit piece. But you get it. That remember there was that 2-week period where they were calling Joe Rogan racist and everybody was trying to get him kicked off Spotify and all of those things? Or do you remember a couple months ago when the whole machine was going after Russell Brand? Like, they pick people who are doing well, saying something different than what the narrative is, and they try to take you out. Well, now this is really interesting. So there's a guy by the name of Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist at Stanford. He's got millions and millions of subscribers, hugely popular podcasts. He's done interviews with Jordan Peterson, with Joe Rogan, and the New York Magazine, which is just part of the machine, did a cover story on him. Got the tweet from New York Magazine. For our latest cover story, Kerry Howley went deep into the wellness-obsessed world of Andrew Huberman, talking with former girlfriends who reveal a darker side to the neuroscientist turned podcast host, manipulative behavior, deceit, and numerous affairs. So now you might go, you might not know who he is. I didn't know a ton about him until the last couple of days, actually. Really, really interesting guy. But he's extremely popular podcaster. So now why are they picking a new guy to go after? And we've seen this a million times, right? As I just said, we've seen it with Rogan. We've seen it with Russell Brand. We know how the machine operates. We've seen it with that cover of the New York Times that I have sitting right behind me in the office when they said that me and Milton Friedman were the leaders of the alt-right. But the reason they go after these people is because they go after anyone who is trying to get to something true, trying to get to something outside of that little Overton window of the things that they want us to talk about. And that is a huge, huge problem. So I want to show you one. You just tell me if this guy strikes you as a right-wing maniac or someone that should be taken out or anything else. Here he is talking with Jordan Peterson about the effects of pornography on young men in our society.
The absolutely pathologic situations for any animal or human is to be able to access repeated dopamine surges without effort or any pursuit that's self-directed or that's directed, I should say. So for instance, cocaine, a drug which potently increases dopamine, or methamphetamine, which potently increases methamphetamine, but doesn't require any sort of adaptive action pursuit except to acquire the drug and spend money on it. No sacrifice. So what ends up happening is the circuit that gets rewarded is only the drug-seeking behavior, and no other behavior will give the kind of potent dopamine release that cocaine or methamphetamine will, which is why they are so pernicious. Now, likewise, right. I'm not...
Well, plus they have that powerful reinforcing effect, right? So not only do you get that kick, but what's reinforced by the dopamine release is the behaviors that were right prior particularly right prior to the ingestion. And if all that is the drug-taking behavior, that's all that develops.
That's right.
You build that monster inside your head.
That's right.
So I can see where you're going on the pornography front.
Right. So I was starting to get a lot of questions. I was kind of surprised. I thought, well, I'm male and, maybe that's why they feel comfortable asking. But people were saying we're asking about pornography, and they were asking, I realize we want to, I'll just be direct about it. They were asking whether or not masturbation was bad. They were asking whether or not masturbation with ejaculation was particularly bad. And here's my stance on this. I'm a biologist and a neuroscientist, not a psychologist. But what we know for sure is that if an individual repeatedly engages in this circuitry, let's say masturbation and pornography with increasingly potent forms of stimulation that are on a screen, a couple of things happen. First of all, what's being reinforced? What's being reinforced is a high dopaminergic response to watching other people engage in sexual behavior, which is very different than being in a first-person sexual experience. Okay, so right there, that what's being reinforced is not actually any kind of improvement in communication skills. It's voyeurism. And as these questions started to come in more and more, I started to realize there was a lot of kind of undertones of people talking about fear of or experience with sexual dysfunction that clearly pornography can lead to. The point is this: masturbation and pornography are potently tapping into the dopamine system and can undermine the very processes of what I consider healthy processes of finding a mate, dating, communication, eventually, if it's appropriate, sexual interaction, etc.
It's undermining pair bonding.
All right, I know this can be a little awkward to talk about, but there's a reason I wanted to show you that clip. First off, clearly you get the understanding that this guy knows what he's talking about. Also, he's talking with Jordan, which adds a little heft to it for why I wanted to show it to you. But the system is going after him because he's talking about some of the things that people are struggling with, right? We constantly are telling young men that they're bad basically by birth and that they have everything stacked for them while we're constantly attacking them and everything else. And clearly there is a huge problem here when it comes to porn and OnlyFans and all of that stuff, right? And that's just a reality. But the system is coming for him because it's why the system comes for people like Jordan Peterson, why the system comes for people like Joe Rogan, why the system comes for people like Russell Brand. It's like if you start helping people get out of their problems, whatever they may be, right? We don't have to just talk about this from a porn perspective. Whatever you're addicted to, whatever your problem is, whatever is not allowing you to become the best person, the system wants you to be kind of broken. The system kind of wants you to not be in the proper relationship. The system kind of wants you not to build the proper family and take responsibility for yourself and all of those things, because then you will be reliant on the system. That is exactly what is happening here. I want to show you two tweets that I think illustrate this quite nicely. Charlie Kirk wrote this about the article, the New York Magazine article that I just referenced there. This is what happens when you get super popular, even if you avoid politics. The media will try and massacre you. Andrew Huberman is fantastic. He's super smart and has helped millions of people lead healthier, happier lives. Yet the media doesn't see that. They see a rich, straight man who is challenging the pharma state. He's attacking one of their main sources of ad revenue, so they must smear him. The media is a vile, sinister hate machine that never builds, only seeks to destroy. I want to show you one other from another person kind of in this help world, the self-help world of Liver Doc. He wrote, Andrew Huberman is the biggest name in pop medical science on social media right now. No doubts there. He has put out great content. No doubts again. I disagree with him on certain topics like supplements, endorsement, and his overconfident clinical advice based on weak evidence when he is not a medical doctor. But this cover story here from the New York Magazine is a dirty hit job on Huberman. It was not required. It's a trash piece replete with ad hominem and personal attacks. He does not deserve this. Sad that this is the price one has to pay for fame. So you guys get it, especially those of you that have been watching this for years and years. Like, we've all been through this machine, and every time someone just appears and kind of is helping people, whether it's helping them understand politics a little bit more, or get unhooked from drugs a little bit more, or take responsibility for their lives a little bit more, the machine goes after them. But it's also a financially based system. MSNBC does not want people getting psychological or personal or medical help from anyone other than MSNBC. They want those used. That's why they want Rogan out. That's why they want Huberman out, or Jordan Peterson out, or anything else. So the best thing that you can do, because I said today was a positive show, is that in the moments where you realize that something is wrong, you can try to build new things. I think if I've done anything right in all of this time that I've been doing this, yeah, I guess the show is pretty decent, but I also built a piece of technology that is helping free people right now in light of all of this big tech censorship and everything else. And I want to throw to Scott Adams, the legendary cartoonist who was doing a live stream the other day talking about free speech and how we can fight the big tech monster. And he gave me and Locals a shout out, and I thought it was quite nice. So I'm giving him the return shout out here.
I can tell you from my own experience that Locals has been a lifesaver. If Locals didn't exist, thank you, Dave Rubin, I could not have been as outspoken as I was, and certainly would not have been, I probably wouldn't have taken the chance of getting canceled. If I knew I didn't have something to fall back on, I probably wouldn't have been as outspoken. So I think Dave Rubin deserves some kind of free speech award. I don't know if there is such a thing, but the fact that he created Locals with others, of course, but creating Locals and giving away that people like Candace and people like me can, at least have some way to stay attached to some part of our career is huge. It's really gigantic. And I'll give Dave double credit because it was only a few days before that he had been saying on social media that he and Candace, I think the way he said it was that they were no longer friends. Was it about Israel? I forget. So, but they were, disagreeing on content enough that it was personal. And Dave immediately said, no, that's not going to stop her going to Locals, because the whole point of Locals is that people like Candace and like me can get a voice. So congratulations again to Dave Rubin for being completely consistent on free speech and supporting it in a way that is way more important than I think he gets credit for. So I'll say it again. If there's any kind of like free speech award, there probably is. He's got to be in the running just for creating one of the greatest free speech tools available.
I just want to say it's nice to hear those things, but that's not the reason I'm playing that for you. The reason I'm playing that for you is I'm just some guy, just like you're just some guy or gal. And if you get in the fight, you might build some things. You might do some things. You might actually be involved with something that will be bigger than you and defend your ability to live as you see fit. And that is exactly what I was able to do just because I tried. That's exactly where we'll get wins. So to connect this to where we were up top, I am very proud. This is from about a year and a half ago, but from Rumble, breaking, Tulsi Gabbard demonstrates how she is being shadow banned and asks her viewers to join her on Locals and free speech platforms where she won't be shadow banned. Watch her Rumble video below and join her Locals community using the join button. So a whole bunch of us are coming together one way or another. Do you remember we played you a clip of Brett Weinstein a couple of weeks ago when he was on Alex Jones? And what he said was he did not think that the people who are wrecking everything right now realize that in the process of wrecking everything, they would take all of the good, sane people and bring us together. Now, it doesn't mean we have to agree on everything or everything else, but a whole bunch of us are waking up. So the hit piece, if New York Magazine, say 3 years ago, had written that hit piece against Huberman, it might have taken him out. They of course, they can still take out people. They can always figure out ways to take out people, ways to lie about people. And as I always tell you with the machine, I'm not worried about the algorithms. I'm not worried about the things that I know they can do. I'm always worried about the things that we don't know they can do. But the point is, there are very few people. The amount of people who now will read the New York Magazine article on Huberman and be like, my God, he's a bad man, we better tune out. That number is decreasing. But the amount of people who will look at what is an obvious hit piece and be like, you know what, I'm interested in this guy. They just kind of, I didn't really know who he was, but what is he's helping people get off addictions, work through their problems. That sounds interesting. Maybe I'll watch that. So that is the hopeful part here. And we just got to keep running with that. Speaking of the internet, though, I've been informed that this show about halfway through, the internet gave out and we did not live stream this whole thing. So there is no post-game show because we got to work through some internet problems. Could it be big tech trying to take out, what's that? Yeah, there is. Okay, so we've got a local outage in the area. Hopefully it's not more a black swan event or anything else. Maybe the whole grid just went down and this is it. Anyway, if that's the case, it was nice knowing you and good luck with everything. And if not, we'll be back tomorrow. So see ya. Bye.
Why would Republicans do this?
Thanks for tuning in to the Rubin Report. You can watch the show live every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern and 8 a.m. Pacific on Rumble, Locals, and YouTube. Don't forget to rate, review, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And you can join me for the post-game wrap-up every day after the show at rubinreport.locals.com.